So if you've watched any of our videos in the past, you've probably heard us tell you that there are 66 books in the Bible, full of history, stories, letters, and poetry that all work together to form God's one big story. There are two big sections, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The New Testament is the location of the book that we are going to explore today. It's called the book of Hebrews. The author of Hebrews understood that some days are harder than others. We may feel like staying in bed a little longer so we don't have to face what's out there. And although we don't know who wrote the book, we do know they deeply loved God and wanted others to know Jesus. At the time Hebrews was written, Jesus was no longer walking around on earth, and we know that many new believers, because of their faith in Jesus, were experiencing mistreatment from other Jews and Roman citizens. As a result, life was pretty hard. Some were weighing if Christianity was worth it or not. The author understood that the more we discover about what God has done in the past, the more we can trust God to act now. Check out what was written in Hebrews. Faith is being sure of what we hope for. It is being sure of what we do not see. That is what the people of long ago were praised for. Faith is such an important word for all of us to understand. It's so much more than hoping for the best in all situations. It's taking a long look at the big picture of God's work through history and trusting God can work out all the hard parts of our story too. The author proceeded to write about some of the Old Testament men and women who faced difficult times but still trusted and put their faith in God. People like Abraham lived a comfortable life surrounded by family and friends. God called Abraham to leave everything he knew, and just like that, without a map, Abraham headed to an unknown land. Abraham obeyed God because of his faith. Even though Abraham was 75 years old and had no kids, get it? Kids? God had promised him enough kids and grandkids and great-grandkids to count the stars in the skies. And Abraham trusted God. And eventually he got his son Isaac. In fact, this entire story of God's people starts with Abraham's simple act of faith. The author also turned his attention towards Abraham's great-grandson, Joseph. He was his dad's favorite son who annoyed his brothers to the point that they sold him into slavery. In Egypt, Joseph opted to work hard instead of sulking over this difficult turn of events. Joseph served time as a slave, was falsely accused of wrongdoing, and spent years in prison. Eventually, Joseph's situation changed. Joseph was second in command to the Egyptian Pharaoh and distributed food during a famine. Throughout Joseph's life, he got back up again and trusted God to work out his story. You get food. You get food. You get food. After several centuries had passed, God's people remained in Egypt and grew into a great nation. But they were forced to work as slaves under Pharaoh's rule. So God called on a man named Moses to help. As a baby, Moses' mom was forced to place him in a basket and put him in the Nile River. The Pharaoh's daughter found Moses and raised him, and Moses grew up and eventually had to flee Egypt. He chose to live a quiet life as a shepherd in the desert. But God had made a plan for Moses. God spoke to him through a burning bush and told him to return to Egypt to free the Israelites from slavery. The task was daunting, but Moses chose to trust God. With his staff in hand, Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, through the Red Sea, and into the desert. For 40 years, Moses led the Israelites through the desert, facing attacks from the outside and complaints from the inside, the Israelites. Abraham, Joseph, Moses, they're just a few of many individuals highlighted in Hebrews 11. Through their faith in God, they were able to do amazing things in the face of difficult challenges. The common thread that weaves throughout all of these Old Testament men and women mentioned by the author of Hebrews is their faith. They did not walk around life with their fingers crossed, just hoping everything would work out, but rather they kept going, trusting that God was in control of the situation. This didn't mean that everything always worked out in their favor for people like David or Samson or Joseph, but it did mean that they could confidently face and even bounce back from really hard times because they believed God knew the end of their story. And you know what's great? The same can be true for us. When we choose to trust God and get back up, we continue the story of these amazing men and women in the Bible. Throughout the Bible, we read story after story of people who faced all kinds of troubles. Some faced giants. One built a boat and filled it with animals to get through this massive flood. One even lost his strength when his hair was cut off. And time again, they made it through the challenges that life threw at them by trusting God. When something gets us down, we can look back in time to people who lived long ago and see how their faith in God changed the way they responded to their situations. So in the busyness of life, it can be easy to forget that God loves you and is always with you. So with that in mind, I want you to think about this question. Who inspires you to get back up? Think about all the people that we just learned about in the Bible. Think about the people you see each and every day. Who helps you see that getting back up when you get down is possible? On top of that, we need to remember that God knows what we're facing. God can help us get through those moments. All you got to do is trust Him. Bye.